Esteemed friends gathered here tonight, welcome. Welcome, thrice welcome. In 1997, the organiser of the Devonport Arts Festival donated funds from that event to the library for the purchase of books written while their authors were living in Devonport. I'd like to name and thank that inspired woman, but I don't know who she is. However, I do know that there is a wonderful library staff in Devonport, embedded in and responsive to their community. And thanks to them, there is a focus on the Devonport Writers Collection. Those books are currently in the hands of Jean Clifton, and she does a wonderful job. I'm Jan, and I stand here as chair of the DLA. We are committed to funding and expanding this collection. Thanks both independent booksellers in Devonport, Bookmark and Paradox Books right there. We source from them new additions to the collection. The DLA aims to expand this in perpetuity, and the funds for this are drawn from a bequest to us from a very generous local couple, Calvin and Valerie Grant. And yes.
Right.
Dennis, come in. Dennis is going to tell you a bit about the grants.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Calvin and Valerie Grant bequest. A few years ago, the Devonport Library Associates were given a most generous sum of money from the estate of Calvin and Valerie Grant. And for the first time, the Associates are able to spend money on something of tangible benefit to our library. The DLA decided last year that the income from this wonderful bequest will be spent on making a collection of books by Devonport authors. I first met Calvin in February 1955. That is exactly 62 years ago. Together with about 20 other aspiring architects at the School of Architecture. While a student, he, together with a few other architects, were living at Trinity Methodist College, where Valerie's father was the principal. After qualifying in 1959, Calvin and Valerie, by now respectably married, spent a year in Europe on a French government scholarship. Their time in Besançon made them Francophiles for life, with a passion for French design, especially cars, hence Kelvin's Peugeot 504 station wagon. In '64, Calvin established his own practice in Devonport. Calvin was a sympathetic, conscientious, able and gifted designer. He was also incredibly industrious and productive, and some of his notable works include the Forum North in Whangarei, the Devonport Methodist Church, the new entry to our old library, and the Prime Minister's house in Tinnacorry Road in Wellington. In his spare time, he became a Devonport Borough Councillor in what, looking back, must be counted the golden age of Devonport Borough, under the Mayor, Jim Titchener, and with others like Mike Pritchard, Stephen Mills, Tris Jochen, and many other outstanding people. We were so lucky to be served by councillors of such exceptional ability. Calvin was a foundation member of the Library Associates, At the same time as raising 3 boys, Valerie morphed from being a competent nurse to the alarming profession of psychology. She became a senior lecturer, an authority on medical ethics, and a research fellow at the medical school with a PhD. Valerie was an avid reader and writer of non-fiction and wrote numerous published scientific papers and articles. She was a published author on gender selection and distribution, her life work. Kelvin and Valerie shared a passion for arts and politics. Few couples have set such a striking example of community involvement and achievement, and the library associates will be forever in their debt for their wonderful bequest. So if any of you are thinking of making a will, do remember us.
Okay, good. Thank you. Okay. Around 2014, with the advent of the super city, Auckland Council policy, bear with me, encouraged libraries to position themselves as centres of their communities. This event encapsulates that policy in that there are 3 community groups represented here who work closely together. Us, the DLA, the Depot Art Space, Lynn and Linda, our friends in shelter when the new library was being built, and right now documenting for us on film this segment of the evening. Michael King Writers Centre. We work together to showcase the writers they are nurturing up there on the hill. We have long admired the work they do, in particular their workshops for youth, which are focused on poetry and creative writing in local schools. So would a representative of the Michael King Writers Centre step forward, please? I don't know who's here tonight. I've got a little gift from the DLA from my back pocket. Lynn, is that you?
Yes, Lynn.
Hi, Mike. Okay, this comes with all our love, and it's a small contribution, carefully folded for your youth groups.
Oh, thank you, Jan. And on behalf of the Trust, I don't think Tanya's here tonight, or Jan, I'll accept this. Thank you so much. And we're delighted that the Devonport Writers Collection, Jan and I have talked about this, anything that's written up the hill on Takaranga is actually going to be recognised as some Devonport writing. So, of course, we have the very best, which is the Booker Prize of 2015.
Thanks, Lynn. Okay. Our wider community guest list for tonight includes authors including the Michael King Writers Centre alumni, descendants and relatives of past Devonport authors, Auckland Council library personnel, local body politicians. We did ask Maggie Barry and Phil Goff, they send their apologies. We have here representatives of publishing houses, the New Zealand Society of Authors, Libraries Foundation, New Zealand Book Council, more. The architects of this library, our very supportive local media, and not forgetting you, the Devonport members of the Devonport community. You are community working at its very best, here in Greater Auckland and extending to the world stage. But it does start here, at home, with our library as a cultural centre in our community. It is staffed and visited by people who know each other. To our elected representatives here present, we don't want this valued community centre to become a soulless, faceless equivalent of a WINS office, dispensing books instead of benefits. And if we feel this here in rich, white Devonport, just imagine how much greater will be the loss of sense of community in less privileged areas of Auckland. Councillors, back then you did a fine thing. Please maintain the excellence, it's valued and it's needed. To the writers, where are you? Make your way forward, please. We need you right now. You stand here in this time and space as inheritors, the latest generation, if you like, of a fine oral tradition of storytelling. You, the poets and the dreamers, are the real movers and shakers of our community. We salute your dedication. We salute your talent. We salute your achievement. And now I would like you all to introduce yourselves just briefly. You're going to have to jump up here, I think, and pass the mic along, however you work it. Here we go. Thank you, everyone.
Hello, I'm Dennis Trussell. I'm not a Devonport writer. It was a mistake. However, I have written a biography of A.R.D. Fairbairn, so I'm vicariously a Devonport writer.
Good on you, Dennis.
Hello, it's lovely to see so many familiar faces. My name is Tracy Barnett. I represent the back end of the Stanley Bay School, probably the most glamorous part near the pathway. Let's see, I am a journalist by trade, and I guess if you address the New Zealand part of me, that's a fairly respectful profession to have. If you address the American side of me, it's just about above a garden slug these days. But I did a few years ago do something that I think might be helpful. I wrote a book called The Quiet War on Asylum. It's a wonderful series of very short books by Bridget Williams Books published in Wellington. And it accomplishes this series, not my book, but this series is wonderful in that it addresses social issues in New Zealand, which was wholly needed. You can sit down and not be an expert on something, but in 2 nights read about something and get a pretty good idea from some pretty smart folks who know a lot about it. My book and my passion and what I do, I guess, in my spare time, if I ever have much, is talk about refugee issues. And in my book, The Quiet War on Asylum, I talk about visiting some refugee camps along the Burmese Thai border, as well as Villawood in Sydney, indeed a mortifying place run by Serco. But really, this book is a treatise and a plea to do more for refugees as New Zealanders. We still rank 96th worst in the world for the number of refugees and asylum seekers we host, which is nothing to be proud of. We have in our own backyard Australia, which has Nauru and Manus, and we have done very little and been absolutely silent as a country politically by speaking out on that.
Shame.
And I think,
Shame.
Thank you, Ian. That's my one fan over there, and fellow student with me. Anyway, so it is called The Quiet War on Asylum, and I highly recommend that you check out the entire series. Not my book necessarily, but it's an excellent series. Lovely to see you all out here tonight. Take care.
Jeff Chappell. As a writer, just doing my best to stimulate what my grandfather called an uproarious community of heretics. So that's kind of it, and the power of the pen to bring the Te Aroha Trail through Devonport. Thanks.
Thanks, Jeff. Kia ora tātou, Dave Vert. Look, I'm really flattered to be part of this group. I'm especially enthralled that it's in this library. Together with Georges-Louis Borges, I've always believed that paradise will be some kind of a library. My whole life has been centred on libraries. It saved this little boy from Onehunga who thought he'd been dropped in from a spaceship. It got me through looking after 2 under 5s. It's done a hell of a lot for me. So the library part is a particular thrill. And I think, as was alluded to earlier, the forces of darkness are stalking the stacks. So I think we need to look after our libraries, these little islands of intelligence and light in a world which some mornings as I work my way through the news appears to be closing in with an ever-increasing darkness. So let's defend our libraries. Cheers.
Hi, I'm delighted to be here. I'm Cheryl Beaumont. I'm a local accountant. Some of you may know me from wandering around the streets here. But in my part-time I write, in my spare time. I write mysteries with historic elements. My current series is a young adult series. That's me.
Bravo.
Hello, I'm Karen Breen. I'm also a local author. My first novel, Sleep Sister, I saw it somewhere around here. The second one is a work in progress. Hopefully it won't be too long before it's sitting beside the first one on the shelves here. We've lived in Devonport for about 15 years, but my connections to Devonport go back for generations. My mother was actually born in the old maternity hospital that was just around the corner. So this was my grandparents' home, and this really feels like the place where I stand. And in fact, the library, my mother's godmother, who was a very important person when I was growing up in my life, she was the first librarian of the Devonport Library. So I'm really, really thrilled to be part of this event, and I completely endorse what everyone has said. We must save our libraries and make them stronger and better. And yes, that's me.
Bravo.
I'm David Slack, and it's nice to be standing here. 13 years ago, I came back about this time of year from a funeral and came home to a phone message saying, would you be interested in writing a book? It was from Bernice Beachman, and it changed the direction of my life, frankly. Also, she said, could you do it in 6 weeks? So I also learned how you could write a book, and in fact, for the last week, I've been upstairs writing one, and this is a splendid place to write a book, let me tell you. It really is tremendous. I also see Anne Salmond, who took part in that 6-week book project. Thank you very much. One last thing I should say is, because you've just reminded me of it, my grandfather and his 3 brothers and father came down from a house up on that hill on the way to that wharf and went away to the First World War, and they all came back, which is some kind of remarkable thing, really, isn't it? Cheers.
Cheers.
Hi there, I'm Tim McBride. I've written a number of legal popular books, popular because they sell. One of them enjoyed the dubious reputation of being the most regularly stolen book of New Zealand non-fiction from the Christchurch Public Library. But in recent years I've given away the legal stuff, I've retired from it, and I'm getting tremendous enjoyment writing whimsical tales from my wayward past for an electronic publication called kiwiboomers.com. Some I write under a pseudonym where I'm concerned I might cause offence. But anyway, I enjoy it, and it's great to be with you tonight.
I'm not going to be able to get up there, so I'll talk from down here. It all started it started actually in 1962 when I found some old diaries under a house.
Closer to the mic, Jean.
Thank you. And it set me off on a journey not only of trying to find out who the person was, but where he'd been. And it's taken me through China and England, around Australia, up into the New Hebrides. And it's been really a wonderful journey to be able to do all that and to enjoy it coming back here in Devonport. Thank you for the library here.
Hi, I'm Julia Gatley, and I write about New Zealand architecture, including, by coincidence, on Ackfield architects who designed this building, and also group architects who are known to many people on the North Shore.
Hi, I'm Anne Salmond, and I represent the side fence of the Stanley Bay School, having for many years written devotedly at the kitchen table, looking at the dental clinic as it was, and the sandpit, and been deeply inspired. So I've been writing about the history of our country and of the Pacific, venturing forth into the world, but always coming back to Devonport and the library. And it's just been, I can't say enough about what a great place this has been to raise a family as well as to write books. And this library, I think, has been a treasure in our community, and like other taonga, needs to be looked after. And just can't understand the people that think that you cut costs by cutting librarians, because books are communications between people and among people. That's what they're all about. It's our thoughts shared with each other across space and time, and they're kind of magical. But they need people to hand them out and talk about them and recommend, and so our library really, really matters. And I agree with everybody else that's saying we've got to fight for them, make sure they get looked after. And I guess the only other thing to say is just what a huge privilege it is to be a writer. Sort of sitting, as I say, at the kitchen table, time travelling, thinking about people like, William Bligh or James Cook or ancestors in the Māori world, and going overseas and chasing some of those people around the Pacific, and then coming home, but having this beautiful, tranquil place by the sea with its communities evolving over time to come back to all the time. Just fantastic. So thanks very much to the library, and thanks very much to the Devonport community.
Graham, please use the stage.
Yes, I'd like to pay tribute to the Devonport Library. It's a marvellous institution, and furthermore the whole Devonport environment is conducive to writing. And I think that's because the sea is all around us, and there are a lot of writers have an affinity with the sea. And every time I get a writer's block, which isn't that often, but when I do, all I have to do is stroll down to Narraneck Beach or come across the Torpedo Bay and walk along the Strand, and everything falls into place. Because I write about the sea and the novels about James Cook's life, somebody said to me, "Gosh, you must have done a lot of sailing." I said, "Well, I haven't actually, but I do catch the Devonport ferry regularly." Thank you very much.
Hi there, I'm Hannah Tunnicliffe, and I'm the author of 3 novels and 1 children's picture book. I've actually only lived in Devonport for about 3 years, but I've wanted to live in Devonport since I was about 6. And I wholeheartedly agree with the fact that writers are drawn here. And I just feel so honoured to be part of such a group of fantastic authors and to be part of such a supportive community. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Lottie Wotherspoon, and I'm an illustrator and a writer. And I've last year I launched my book Tiny Owl on the Ramshackle Farm here, and had amazing support from people like Sue and June and the librarians who made that launch just kind of work seamlessly and really celebrate the night and my book. And yeah, I mean, the beautiful thing about Devonport that I find is that it's a bit of a, you're on your own a lot of the time writing or illustrating. And, but then you step out the door and we've got some incredible community. And ever since I've arrived in Devonport, there's people like Tim here and my friends Julia and Hannah, who's just spoken. Everyone will say, "Oh, how's the writing going?" And that means a huge amount as a writer, because it's just that kind of spurs you on as you kind of go through this quite lonesome task of writing. Well, I find that. And yeah, so my community is incredibly important to my process as well. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Kevin Hill. I'm a new boy on the block, so to speak. I'm from Christchurch, but I've been in Devonport 30 years. So my 2 books are dealing with a bit of history, basically, of the Christchurch music scene of the 70s, which you may all remember the 70s, which is pretty vibrant back then, and also dealing with a book called Out of Fashion, dealing with the fashion scene of that city in the 70s. So I was delighted to be here, and all of these books are all due to my fantastic publisher Terry Gray, who's a Devonport lady. So thank you, Terry, for all your help on that. Oh, there she is. So come and see her if you need a publisher. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Rebecca Tyler and I've written a book called Full Tilt. I've lived in Devonport for 42 years, since I was 9, and my book was about an 8-month adventure I did around the world with my 2-year-old and 10-year-old when I was a single mum, so that was quite an adventure. But I self-published and I did a Kickstarter campaign and had to raise money to publish it, and I raised $15,000 in 1 month, which was pretty cool. But it's not an easy road, being self-published, and I literally went door to door with my trolley of books around Auckland, so some of you might have been bombarded by me. You bought my book, thank you so much. But it really isn't easy, and I belong to a little writers group with 2 other friends, and we've been together for about 10 years. And I found this article one day in a magazine, and it was about the 50 Shades of Grey author who's made $160 million. So I took it to my writers group and I said, we need to write an erotic novel. So we've spent the last year doing that. So watch this space.
Tēnā rā koutou katoa e te rangatira mā. Aroha mai, kia kaha mai, whano. And I'm just meeting to this incredible group of writers, and I cannot believe that I'm actually with this group, so I'm slightly shell-shocked. That might be because I've just come from Kaikoura, but it is such an incredible honour to stand beside you. And I said whano, which means to bind. Whano, to bind. Whano, to bind. Haramai te toki, bring together, to work together. Haramai te toki, haumie, huie, tāhie. I don't know if can you hear me? Do I need to?
Please use the mic. Thank you. Please use the mic.
My name is Te Awhina Rangimārie e Arahanga, and I'm a library slut. If you didn't hear that, I'm a library slut. I came to Devonport after I received a phone call from Karen from the Michael King Centre to say that I had become a writer in residency, and I was walking down Queen Street and I almost fell over. And it was a real shock because I didn't actually realise I was a writer. And so I thought, I better pretend to do this really well. And I arrived in Devonport, and I had just come from the Christchurch earthquake, and I had 2 suitcases, and it was one of the best places I could possibly have come to. I had found a place to live, and a place to live with family. Even though you weren't my family, you suddenly became my family and took me in with open arms. And I lived, if I wasn't at the Michael King Centre, I did live in the corner just over there where I got the name of the poet in the corner. And I have this wonderful love for the Michael King Centre, and I left, and I sort of thought, well, I can't leave Devonport because you have supported me. And one of the most amazing things that was given to me when I left the Michael King Centre was a bed that Karen had said I could have. And I was so proud because nearly every writer in New Zealand had slept on that bed. And now I say I've slept with nearly every writer in New Zealand. Excellent. So, 50 Shades of Grey got nothing on this. So there's been 3 times I've cried in a library. One was about a month ago when I was sitting in the library, Christchurch South Library, and I was reading and I saw Cat Dies. Oh. And I read the article and I just started sobbing. And someone across from the table looked at me and said, "What's wrong?" And I just went, "Benjamin." And she came running over and she said, "Oh, was he a good friend?" And I went, "I just don't even know where to start." So, Benjamin, wherever you are, meow. The second time I cried was in this corner when I was meant to be writing something and I was watching something on the internet. It was 7 days and it was just incredibly hilarious, and I started laughing until I started crying, and once again someone came over to me and said, "Are you all right?" And I went, "I don't even know where to start." And the third time I cried in a library was when I was 5 years old, and I went to school in a little place called Southbridge, which is just south of Christchurch. And yes, I'm a Cantabrian. I do have 2 eyes instead of 1, though. And I was 5. I walked into the library, the school library, and could not believe could be so many books in one little room, that I cried and said, "How am I going to ever read all these books?" And I did. Yeah. By the time I left my school, I had read every book in that little library, which is actually probably just the size of that room there. And because I had read so many books, the National Library had to send me more books to read. So libraries, Haramai te toki haumie hui e tāki e.
And could you just move to the side, please? For the filming, thanks. Could you just move to the side? Could you just move to the side?
Oh, yes, it is. It's working. Okay. We have also invited the descendants and relatives of writers past who lived in Devonport. I know there's 1 here, 2 here at least. That's been a bit of a harder search. Dinah, would you like to say something? This is Dinah Holman.
Yes.
A.R.D. Fairbairn's daughter. Hello. Thank you, Joan. I stand up here.
Yes, I am a descendant of a dead writer. And he died 60 years ago this month, poet Rex Fairbairn. I was 19 at the time, you can do the maths. Thank you. So I've got memories of course, Rex, but also his friends. And we knew them well. At the moment, we're putting on an exhibition at the depot of Rex's cave drawing, rock drawing, fabric panels. But in association with that, we're doing a presentation on 11 other people who were creative in some way at that time, all of whom I knew, and most of whom were very good friends of Rex's. Anthony Alpers, and so I know Anthony's son, Philip, but he's in charge of the anti-gun lobby in Sydney. He lectures there on that topic. So he can't be here, but that's one descendant, I'm another. There'll be a few more around, I really don't know. And of course, I'm only thinking of people in that fairly narrow time slot. We arrived in Devonport in 1946, and Rex died in 1957, and I left Devonport in about 1960. So within that period, however, there were some significant writers, Catherine Mansfield, and a book about dolphins, one called In Polynesia. He went to Polynesia for 4 months, sent there by the Auckland Star, and it really had a deep effect on him. And he wrote other books too, one about his father, who was a well-known judge. Now, his wife at the time was Sarah Campion, and she was a journalist and a novelist. I don't know whether she wrote, I suspect not, wrote any of her books while she was in Devonport, which is, the criterion for being a Devonport writer. But however, she made a tremendous contributions, especially through the letters to the editor on various social issues. She was a founding member of CARE and a wonderful woman. So there are those people. I'm thinking there'll be perhaps lots of others, I don't know, perhaps a few others who are of similar calibre, but we forget about them. So that's one of the exercises of the exhibition that we're doing at the depot, which starts on Saturday, by the way, and you're very welcome to come. The opening is at 2 o'clock on Saturday, and it goes on till the 22nd. So there may be many other writers that I think it would be a really good exercise to identify those writers and not forget them. Another one is Judy Binney, my childhood pal, best pal. Her father, Sidney Musgrove, Professor Sidney Musgrove, he was a Shakespearean scholar. Of course, he didn't write novels, he wrote scholarly articles. Sorry? And yes, poetry. Yes. Incidentally, people have been talking about the library. Am I the only person present who used to go to the library when it was in a shop building just above the old post office? Anybody else? Yeah, that's how long I've been going to them. Just a factor of my age, I guess. But Judy Musgrove and I used to go and spend hours in that library, and also there was a private library opposite the Victoria we used to go to read highfalutin stuff such as Biggles and Enid Blyton, and look where it got us. But I also want to mention the one person I do know who lived much more recently is Chris Cole-Catley. She was the driving force behind the establishment of the Michael Trust Writers Centre, and I was also a founding member on that committee at that time. I was on for about 4 years. And Chris came to Devonport, so she qualifies. She came to Devonport in 2000, she died in 2011, and she wrote several books. One in particular she wrote while she was living here, which is Bright Star, about the astronomer Beatrice Tinsley. So there's a more recent one. But I just know those people. There'll be other people I don't know, and I do think it would be worth recording them. So
Sarah Campion wrote a chapter in the publication The 100 of Devonport.
Yes, she did, and that was edited by Musgrove.
Yes.
Yes, that's right. Yes, that's true.
Here. Yes.
When she was here. Oh, she does qualify. Well, she was a great person.
She's down at, her and Alpes are both down as Takapuna writers.
Who's that?
Campion and Alpes are both down as Takapuna writers.
Are they? Not at all, no. They lived in Stony Bay. They lived with us some of the time. They lived on Waiheke. Sarah, by the way, she had, by the time she's 46, she said she'd had about 50 jobs. She did anything and roved everywhere. She wouldn't tell the Nazis the names of the Jewish children and the kids she was teaching in Germany. I mean, these people are fascinating, and it tells you so much about the era. That's why partly why I think they're worth pursuing. Anyway, thank you for listening, and I'll move on.
My happy job to read out a list of apologies, get some names in the air. But first of all, I'd just like to tell a story about Rex Fairbairn, whom I met when I was on the sort of student roundabout. But I worked for a couple of years in Stockholm. Those were the days when dutiful sons wrote an aerogram to their mum every week and got back letters packed with news and newspaper clippings and so on. So while standing in a conditoree next door to the bookshop where I was working, and a bit of paper fluttered to the ground, and it was the death notice of Rex Fairbairn. And I can still remember the horrible chill and the tears that started to my eyes, because he was a personal loss to me. That's how important writers are, I think. So some of the people who have told us that they unfortunately can't be here in alphabetical order: Maggie Barry, Joyce Fairgray, Bruce Grant, the Grant's son, one of the Grant's sons, Greg Hall, Kevin Ireland, who's chasing trout in Southland, Shona Koya, who's chasing literary targets in Waiheke, and Vincent Matthews. So there are a lot more of us than are just here tonight. Right, so we treasure them all. Thank you.
I'm going to keep you 2 seconds longer. Hands up everyone in this crowd who will be a Devonport writer by next year or the year after. I know there's heaps of you. You talk to me, yeah, thanks. Okay. So that's the end of the formalities. There are heaps of people here for you all to network with. There are wonderful books to buy. And this has been such a popular event that it may be that we restrict it to members only next year. What can I say? Join. Have a lovely time. Bye-bye.